Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is WBN 001. Today we are joined with Dr. Kenneth Gray. Dr. Gray is running for a congressional seat in the newly formed 4th Congressional District. Great to have you today, Dr. Gray. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So for everybody out there, what we're going to be doing is Dr. Gray will be asked 8 questions. 5 of those questions Dr. Gray was given prior to this interview, and 3 he has not seen, and we will ask during the interview. We'll start off with Dr. Gray giving us an introduction, explain a little bit about himself, and then we will go into the questions. Dr. Gray, go ahead and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, Christian, my education and experiences uniquely qualify me to be the congressman for the 4th Congressional District, particularly because of these troubled times. I received my PhD in political science and economics, and I received an international relations certificate, and then I went to work immediately on the Comparowoods Plateau doing economic analysis for a huge development was planned for there for a coal mine, electricity generating plant, and new cities, towns, just magnificent system, well planned down there. And of course that was killed because the developers just decided there was just absolutely too much red tape. And then later on, Clinton locked up that area forever. And then I went to oil shale country, and I can tell you a little bit about oil shale.
Yeah, please do.
I became fascinated with it really because it was just amazing eye-opener when I realized just how much potential this relatively unknown resource had for the United States economy and for the people of Utah. And as part of my job, I had to do a lot of research, but also just personally, I became heavily involved in doing this. Started writing books on the subject. I've now written 4 books on energy economics, and all of them deal partially with oil shale.
And those 4 books are available on Amazon, correct?
2 are out of print.
2 are out of print.
4 are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and my webpage
Okay.
at kennethgray.us.
Excellent.
Union Oil Company is completely independent of completely independent of international oil companies. It was entirely domestic. It had been planning this for actually about 50 years. And in 1956, they finally decided to go build a plant and start producing oil. And they did. And that oil was competitive with Texas crude oil. And Texas crude oil was very cheap at that time. And so if they had been able to continue, this would have been what oil would provide, what it would have cost for the United States until the present time, which would be today would be about $1.19 a gallon for gasoline.
And that's the black section on that
That's
chart.
the black
Okay.
line, and this is actually what happened because crude oil, they were blocked.
Okay.
This is all explained in my books. I don't have time here, obviously, to go into all the details, but they were just blocked from doing it, and so they didn't do it, and we just lost an incredible opportunity. And I'm not talking about just a little bit of oil. This is enough oil in this country here, close to the surface, to provide all U.S. needs for 300 years.
Wow.
At that price. Now, in 1972, the Bureau of Mines did a huge study, a very detailed study with accounting, line-by-line study of all the expenses involved. And they came to about the same conclusion that Union Oil had already proven on the field. They said, well, it'd be the same price in 1972 as Texas crude. And if they had started up right then and gone, any company, and had gone till today, again, it would have been below $1.13 a gallon, 12 a gallon, all these years, and today it would be about $1.12 a gallon.
Okay.
Here again, here's the roller coaster we've been subjected to instead
Right.
for all these years. The main reason, like I said, I can't go into all the reasons, but the main reason is this. Federal lands is where it is, and we do not have free access to those federal lands. Actually, economists know that the definition of socialism means when government owns the means of production. And so while everybody else has capitalism out here, we have socialism.
Which is a huge hot topic in the state of Utah right now.
It is.
With
It is
the
very.
lands.
Yeah, it is very, very big.
All right.
Okay. And of course, this is what has been happening with the oil import. And this is when I got heavily involved in the 70s, warning that economic disaster was coming if we did not fix this and become energy independent. And today it's here.
Yeah.
And then to continue on with my education and experiences, after I worked in the oil shale country, I went to work for the state of Utah for 6 years as a supervising a labor market economist. Then I started my own business, again in economics, again in economic analysis, called Gray's Econometrics. I did that for another 6 years. Then I became a certified database administrator, went to work for 3 Fortune 50 companies for about 10 years. And so my whole life I've been really heavily involved. When I did develop some systems, once I got into database administration, I also became a programmer, and I developed a system for Hill Air Force Base to deal with missiles. So I'm quite familiar with defense policy. And especially missiles.
And the missile, that missile software is for the Minuteman.
Yeah,
missile
that was
maintenance
for
software.
the Minuteman
Yeah.
missile software. Yes, that's fascinating, going down in those bunkers and everything.
Yeah.
And then I've always had an interest in elections, and I developed some software called Swing to Victory, and we used that software in 1992 to contribute to the defeat of Wayne Owens, who was a Democrat very similar to Jim Matheson. He could not win if he couldn't get Republicans, and so what we had to do was get know where those swing voters were and go out and focus on that. And it's the same thing I would do with Jim Matheson. I can use that software, and I will use that software to know where the voters are and focus on that. Because the truth is, Jim Matheson is going to beat anybody with his shotgun television ads supported by unions, millions of dollars poured into that.
Sure.
The way you have to beat him is to have a message that he can't compete with, he doesn't understand, and to be able to focus in and target your audience and get those Republicans who are switching over to come back.
Right, and for the people out there that are new to what he's speaking about, it's a computer program that takes the election results and gives a idea of where the swing voters are located within the election, so that they're able to actually go in and isolate those and appeal to those swing voters, which everyone knows in this coming election is going to be a major factor in the 4th Congressional District facing Jim Matheson.
Correct.
All right, this is really great stuff to hear about. Charts, appreciate you bringing those too. It definitely helps with everybody out there getting a better idea. Let's go ahead and dive into the questions. As I had stated before, the first 5 questions he was given in advance, and this was so that he could put together a concise and articulate response to those 5 questions, and then the remaining 3 are just first time he's heard them is going to be as they're read. So on to this first question: does the United States have enough natural resources to be independent of natural energy resources that are currently being imported from other countries? And please clarify what those resources are and define what is enough and how long these natural resources are expected to last.
Well, enough is to make the United States completely energy independent for forever, and that can be done particularly with oil shale. As I already mentioned, there's 300 years of oil shale there at $1.12 or so a gallon, and we wonder when we hear things like this, but it's because we're so caught up with the idea that it's an inexhaustible resource and we have to worry about this and we have to bow to Saudi kings and all that. All that's nonsense. It's a commodity. It's a commodity like wheat, and there's just so much of it. Especially, we've really been blessed in the United States because we have so much of this commodity. If we just use the smallest bit of innovation and forget the idea that you always have to drill, you go out and dig. This is stuff you have to dig, and it'll last you 300 years. The Parejo process, which is very simple. You just take the rock and you put it on a conveyor belt. It goes through the conveyor belt. It actually releases gas, which continues fueling the oven, if you can imagine. So there's no cost to run the thing. And then when it comes out the other end, it's 1/4 crude oil and 3/4 byproducts. And those byproducts are also very valuable. So they include aluminum and potash. And of course, you have to have a company that's responsible, and you have the state. You should, if you get rid of the federal government, you'll have state agencies and communities.
And many argue that the state can do things a lot more efficiently and effectively than the federal.
Well, they should be monitoring because they're elected closer to the people. And then there's, I also mentioned Caparros Plateau, and the coal down there, the anthracite, clean burning coal, is so big that we have not even been able to get geologists in to make complete estimates. We're talking about thousands of years of coal if you just go mine the stuff that's easy to get. And you say, well, we don't want to burn that much coal. Okay, ship it to China. They'll take it. China has a lot of coal in their mountains, but they don't have the resources to get it out. So you ship it to China, pay off our debt. You just get busy and develop our resources. You cannot just keep borrowing. Nation just cannot keep borrowing. And then there's natural gas, which we're finding more new finds every day. So we're in no trouble at all. The problem is politics and people who will force the issue, and that's what I'll do if I'm elected. I'll force the issue.
So we do have, to highlight it, oil, coal, and natural gas in an abundance. And the smallest number that I heard was the 300 years with the oil, all the way up to, who knows, thousands of years with the coal.
And see, each one of those serves a unique purpose because of their nature. You don't have to change them. You don't have to try to make oil out of corn, all this kind of stuff. Oil's ready to go in your gas tank almost. Natural gas is ready to go in your house and heat it, and coal is ready to burn in electricity plants.
Sure. So let's go ahead and go into the second question. This actually stems somewhat from the first question. As you had talked in the charts, and for people that aren't out there, read up on the website that he has, and it explains a lot of stuff. That is, he has been correct in ringing warning bells about energy crisis the country would face before the country faced them. As he went over on his charts, he explained with the cost of oil and how the bureaucracy actually drove that cost up, and some of the concerns would be to that. Hindsight is 2020.
Sure.
Great to know that you were correct back then. Wish we would have listened.
Right.
We didn't. Where can we go now? How can you address this issue if you're elected as a member of the House of Representatives? What can you do?
Okay, in my campaign literature, I've already sent out a description of what I call the Energy Homestead Act. What happened is, in 1920, a bill was passed by Congress, by the so-called progressives, which said, we won't develop this land anymore, we'll just keep it. And look, I mean, this is what made America great, in addition to the Constitution and the great populace. This is what made America great, was the ability to get in here and farm, own the land, go in business, work all night if you had to, and make a profit, and build the nation. Same with Texas oil and Oklahoma oil. But when we get out here, we've lost that. We don't have that anymore. So what has to be done, regardless of what the state of Utah does or anybody else does, which I applaud, what has to be done is you have to get this barrier out of the way. You have to have an Energy Homestead Act so that individuals, state governments, local governments can start, they make claim to this land. They say, and nobody can stop them. They make a claim. If they show that it's a good plan and they start producing, they get title to the land, and then they're responsible. When it's depleted, they've got to make sure it's cleaned up. They've got to take care of it. They've got to be good citizens. But they can develop this, all that. That is absolutely what has to be done, and then we can get this going right away. Right away. I'm not talking about, people always say, well, let's study it. Well, we've studied oil shale for over 50 years. Now's the time to develop. That's what we have to do.
And is it correct that Canada is moving forward in the oil shale?
Well,
and currently we're not.
Well, in Canada, it's more oil sands.
Yeah, oil sands, okay.
Right, and that's more expensive. That's the thing about the Uinta Basin, Green River Formation.
We're actually a better plan than what they have
It's
going on
better
there.
because all you do is put it in the oven like I described.
Excellent.
Oil sands, you have to go through a lot of chemical water, uses a lot of water chemical process, so that raises the price a lot. But that just shows you what we could do, because they can do it, and it's more difficult for them to do it than it is for us to do it.
Right. Well, let's move on to the third question. This question is a very popular question during this election, and a very sensitive question for a lot of individuals. What is your position on illegal immigration, the financial implications of illegal immigrants, and how do you plan to address this issue if elected?
Well, I heard Governor Perry of Texas say that he couldn't do it with walls. He had to do it with electronic means as far as protecting the border. I disagree with that entirely. You build two walls, parallel walls. If somebody gets over the first wall, they're stuck in the middle for a while before they can get over the second wall. And that's kind of a no man's land. And there's where you have your electronic equipment. And that gives you time to get to them, arrest them, send them back. And I don't see any reason at all why we could not seal the border off completely with that technology. And the second thing is we have to work with state governments. I'd be just the opposite of what Obama does. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the state and the federal government can't work cooperatively to solve the immigration problems. Of course, Obama sues them when they try to do that. Should do just the opposite. You should pat them on the back and get involved with them and let state and the federal government solve the problem. And thirdly, through energy independence, if we bring unemployment way down, which it would do, then I think you'd have a better response from illegal immigrants about the prospects of leaving, which they must do, and come voluntarily, and being able to get in line to come back. Because when unemployment goes down to 2%, they think, yeah, I have some experience, albeit I got it illegally, and I want to go back and do it the right way.
Right. Makes sense. We'll go ahead and go into this next one. With regard to the United States Constitution, where do you believe it is most violated, ignored, or disregarded by both the federal government and the state of Utah? If elected, what do you plan to do in order to stop these unconstitutional practices?
Well, I think the worst one historically, and has been there for about 100 years, and that's Article 4, Section 3, and Section 2 of the Constitution. Article 4, Section 2 states that all the states are equal. This came up in the Constitutional Convention, of course, and James Madison said, look, because they are an exclusive group of 13 colonies, and they said, look, no other state is going to accept it if they're not like us. So all states are equal, and they put it in the Constitution, and of course, we have this terrible situation where we're not equal. It's plain and simple, we're not equal, and it affects us every single day for almost 100 years. And the second part of that is Article 3, which clearly states that the Congress has the authority, exclusive authority, to dispose of the land. And so while I appreciate what the state of Utah has done, they sort of ignored this. And that's because that's where it's really going to be solved, in Congress, and that's what I want to do. With my Homestead Act, I want to go there and solve it. Because having one judge being the decision maker on what's going to happen just isn't going to work. We have bad precedents against us already for what the state of Utah is doing. But let me repeat, I support what they're doing because it brings attention.
Sure, starts that conversation going.
To the issue.
Yeah. All righty, let's go ahead into the fifth question. This is the final question that you had prior to this Q&A. You're considered an expert in the field of economics. You've talked a lot about that from your educational background and some of the stuff up on the charts. As an expert, what needs to be done to restore the economic prosperity of this country and to the state of Utah? And I'll just lead off on that I think now that I've heard your answers on some of those, it's pretty clear what needs to happen. So why don't you just go ahead and answer that question by bringing it home what you said.
Well, yeah, let me make a little larger perspective on it. I look at the economy like a two-floor house. The lower foundation is things that come from the earth: energy, food, steel, natural resources. The second one is manufacturing, when you put those things together.
Sure.
And the second floor first floor is manufacturing, the second floor is services. Now what's happened is the foundation's all eroded. If you're living in a house where the foundation's eroded, it's not going to last too long, because we've been relying on Saudi oil and Venezuelan oil and just not cared about really taking care of our own home. And secondly, of course, the manufacturing has practically been destroyed by trade policies that don't favor us,
right.
Especially with China. So now what you've got left is the service sector. Now a lot of people in the service sector are in trouble, like retail people and people who can't get a job. But up there's also this elite group of bankers and politicians who are giving bailouts to one another. It's like an all-night party. I mean, they're taking, let me give you a bonus for $1 million. Let me give you a bonus for $1 million. So they're having a great time.
Yeah.
But they're sitting on top of a house which is about to collapse.
I don't think there's a lot of people who dispute that. That is for sure. So basically, the foundation is the natural resources. That strong foundation is strong. We know it's strong. We need to access it. Coming off of that, you have your first floor, which is the manufacturing, and we're able to put to work all those natural resources, and then come out on the second floor with the service industry, which is what is.
It should be reasonable. Yeah. Your local bank and that's very reasonable. All this structuring of debt to send to China, that's not reasonable.
And every tier sounds solid, and you can see within it how it would affect the economy.
Right.
So on to the three questions that you. They're for the Q&A that you have not heard yet. Here's the first one. Now, in these questions, there were a lot of questions that came in that we really had to condense and try to put them in the body of a single question. So here's your first one. You have stated that you believe the Constitution must be amended to define marriage as between one man and one woman. This statement brought the following question. Without such an amendment, do you believe that it is unconstitutional to enact or enforce a law against a U.S. citizen based on or guided by the citizen's race, color of skin, religion, gender, or sexual preference? And again, the question was led off with without that amendment.
Well, yes, of course it is. I mean, everybody has fundamental rights to due process under the Fifth Amendment, under the 14th Amendment. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, your race, or anything else. You have these rights to due process. And if you're discriminated against it, if you're denied those rights for any reason, it's absolutely unconstitutional.
All right. Next question. Okay, now this question is actually a condensed version of several questions, like I explained, but they all have the same overall theme. On a large scale, meaning years of unchecked actions occurring within the country and its government, all the way down to a personal individual level, there's an overwhelming problem where individuals who are currently working hard and contributing to society are being forced to pay for those who do not, have made poor choices in the past, or will receive incentives if they act a certain way. What should be done to fix that problem?
Well, one thing you've got to do, like I said, is you've got to bring unemployment down to 2% and make sure that everybody, and you can do that with what we've discussed, and make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate in the labor market, but then you still have to have laws in place that keep people from taking advantage of the various welfare systems. Obviously, there has to be a safety net. Social Security, for example, I really don't like the idea that they're talking about cutting Social Security or doing the Social Security, because we pay for that. We pay for that, and the fact that the government misspent that is not acceptable. That's our bank account, and we're entitled to
Sure.
it. There are other areas where I think you just have to get rid of all the loopholes, and you just have to be, every bill that I would review with the fact of not just what effect does this have on the party it's trying to help, but what effect does it have on the taxpayer? And is it reasonable and justified to put that kind of a burden on the taxpayer? Usually the answer is no.
Yeah, and a lot of that is not happening and has not been happening, is the belief of a lot of people. In regard to that question that I had just asked, just so that there is a little backdrop on it, one of the areas that was asked was an individual was concerned that they were paying for insurance on a monthly basis, and that with how much they had to work in order to pay that, the idea of going to, say, an emergency room was not a likely scenario because it would cost too much money. So the likelihood of them having checks in place where they would schedule a meeting with their physician was likely, whereas the individual who does not pay for their insurance is on a state program, federal program for the insurance, they would likely go into the hospital for the emergency treatment. That was on the individual level. Same types of situations on a larger level, and I believe you answered them great. All right, last question that we have for this Q&A is, this question actually comes from another delegate. This is actually a very popular question that is going around in this election that a lot of people are asking, and not a lot of people are giving a straight answer. So from this delegate, and I'm paraphrasing his question, he didn't give it in writing, he gave it verbally. Aside from the military, many government officials from the federal level all the way down to the city level raise their right hand and they take an oath. Many of the problematic situations we face likely wouldn't exist if that oath was upheld. Every individual government official, if asked, would profess that they have upheld this oath that they took to the highest of standards. Yet here we are. If elected, what solutions can you offer to a public who truly is becoming more and more disillusioned by this and truly desires to participate in the solution of it?
Well, I guess one of the things you can point out is how egregious the violations are, and hopefully encourage people to change. I think probably the most egregious one I've ever heard is Nancy Pelosi. She raised her hand and said, I will support the Constitution. Then when she was handed the health care bill, she said, we've got to pass it and then we'll read it and see what it says. Obviously that's not keeping with the oath. You read the bill, you have to understand it. And another thing we can do is cut down, is make the bills so that they're more manageable. I think when a bill is extremely complex and hard to understand, and it leaves a lot of room for bureaucrats to get in and switch things around, that it's unconstitutional just for that reason alone. And so we've got to get people to say, look, you made an oath, here's your job, now let's see how you did that job according to that oath. And not have all these opportunities, and Congress is at fault here, because they open the door. EPA, they give them carte blanche to go out and harass people and hurt people when that's a violation of their oath, but Congress opened the door by giving them too much leeway. So the main thing I would do is make every bill in my realm absolutely clear what the agency or the person responsible for executing the bill is supposed to do.
Sounds good. I appreciate you answering those three. I know that, in my opinion, those are three pretty big questions to get asked just the day of, and I think it takes a lot of an individual in order to articulate those and answer those in stride. Thank you very much. We'd like to wrap the Q&A up with Dr. Gray kind of following up on anything that he has as a candidate that he would like to convey to the viewers right here of WBN 001. Dr. Gray.
Well, when I was in grade school, I had more customers on my paper route than any other paper boy in the Salt Lake Valley. And I even won a prize. The prize was my choice of a bicycle or an airplane ride circling the Salt Lake Valley. And I chose the airplane ride, and I'll never forget looking down upon the open pit copper mines at Kenneth. I mean, that was just really cool. And then of course I thought maybe that's part of the reason, maybe it's been with me my whole life, but you've got to get this open pit mining, oil shale, and things going. And when I do this, I realize that I talk a lot more about energy policy than I do about a lot of the other social issues. But I am very, very strongly a social conservative, very, very strongly a fiscal conservative, but so are the other four candidates in this race. We share these views. We're very, very, very close on these views. So what really separates me is that I have the experience and the ability to go out and actually solve the energy problems that we're facing today, and virtually with your help, with the help of the people of Utah, we'll do it. I mean, we'll solve it. We'll light a fire of economic freedom in Washington that will burn forever. And I realize there's a lot of candidates in the race, in all races, that do not even approach what I do in terms of detail. And they give you a lot of fluff and a lot of platitudes, and that's their platform. That's not my way. I deal with actual facts and details that make sense. You can't put a fluffy feeling in your gas tank.
Sure. And just for all the viewers out there, your website, so they could go online and read more about you, right, is?
www.kennethgray.us, and that website is like one you've never seen before.
There's a lot of information.
Educational information.
Yeah, one of the things I would recommend to everybody is you have a paper that is about the Constitution that
right,
is on there. That is a great paper. So everybody out there, if you're interested in the Constitution, that website, direct link right to it. It's free. You're able to read what he's written. It's some very good stuff. Dr. Gray, thank you so much for your time today. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Everybody, that's going to conclude it for our Q&A today with Dr. Gray. Be sure to view the follow-up where I will give an overall evaluation, my opinion, of Dr. Gray and his positions as a candidate. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.